This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Gunners Rust Podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are, and you are here for one reason, and we're going to talk about it. If you're listening to on iTunes, Spotify, over on YouTube, here on the Patreon, you are here for one reason, and I understand it because it's exciting. Whether it's real, whether it's something that will come to fruition, is a whole different story. But do we need to get excited? Yes, we do. So today we'll be talking about, and almost exclusively, Vinicius Jr. and the general transfers. Pre-season's getting going this weekend, Saturday, in Girona, I believe. I think we're doing a camp here for the week. A few players have joined us. We'll get to all that today on the podcast. So if you're new to us, welcome. Every Monday and Wednesday on iTunes, Spotify and Amazon Music. Leave us a 5-star review if possible. If you listen to us regularly and you haven't done that, please do. It just helps our algorithms. It helps us pop up in better parts of those different podcast platforms. And the Patreon. On the Patreon, you get multiple more audios a week for about £6 a month if you click the link below this audio. And also with that, you get put into a raffle. All the paid Patreons get put into a raffle. And at the minute, there's not many at all. So if you want to win an Arsenal graded card, here's the best time to do it. £6, you might win a card that's worth up to 50 to 60 quid. And that will happen forever on our Patreon. Every single month we give away a graded Arsenal slab in the trading card world. If you're new to all that, maybe it's a starter for you. Maybe you get into the hobby. And if you are interested, places like Whatnot are great places to buy different, trading cards, things like that. Now will be below this video or audio. You'll be able to click that link for Whatnot and you get £10 free credit to go spend. So, hey, you could sign up to Patreon, get £10 free credit on the Whatnot, go buy a few cards for a tenner on Whatnot, maybe win the raffle to get an Arsenal graded card. And you might be thinking, I've only spent £6 and I've got a graded card, a load of other cards, and you've started a hobby or something else. So you could resell like we do and make a little bit of money. So either way, we are here for Vinicius Jr. It was a Saturday. I'll say that. It was exciting. I think Saturday I went out with my son, his grandparents, my parents, and we went to a food festival in a local town, which was lovely. And just midway around, I just glanced at my phone and young Simon Miller had sent me a post. And this was the exact post. It was a screenshot of David Ornstein. And it said with the old red light on it, exclusive. Arsenal exploring a move to sign Vinicius Jr. from Real Madrid. AFC interest early stages, plus clubs not yet talked, but idea approved on all levels. Much rests on contract process as no breakthrough yet. Real Madrid do not want free exit at the Athletic. Hand of Arsenal, James Nicholas, both also posted very similar things around similar times, and we're not going to get into the conversation of who posts first and who knew what first and blah blah blah, because I know Hand of Arsenal has lost a little bit of credibility. I think that account is in the hands of someone else, because last year they were taking pictures from the swimming pool at the Sobar, getting every transfer right before it happened, and information about Arteta that no one could have, and he was lifting Arteta on the pitch. He's clearly a member of staff. I think that member of staff isn't with the club anymore. Hence why they were saying at the end of the season, that'll probably be it from them. And all of a sudden they are constantly tweeting and Instagramming now. And it's a lot more long form. It's more vague. It feels very much like the in the know accounts you get on social media. So that's a whole conversation for another day. So either way, Hand of Arsenal, whether they tweeted this after Ornstein or not. But James McNicholas with The Athletic, and that's where David Ornstein has posted The Athletic, because that was James McNicholas' kind of blog, his original kind of breaking news, I guess. So that's opened up a lot of conversation, and there's so much conversation on, do we need this player? Does he fit? Will it blow up our salary cap? Well, not salary cap, but salaries. Is he a bit of a cancer to a locker room, people say? Is he actually that good? There's all these things we're going to talk about here today, and the market is completely skewed. We've talked about this. Elliot Anderson, 116 million. Morgan Rogers, 117 million. Tonali's a £100 million player. And that is definitely throwing it. Barcola, they're putting, I can't remember the exact fee, but is it 100 50 million, I want to say. They're putting that price tag on Barcola. No one is going to pay that. And the reason they're paying that is, I heard someone the other day on Askcast ask a question. And the question was, is 80 million the new 40 million? And I believe it is, but only to the Premier League. This is not happening in, Celta Vigo are not buying players for 40 million or 80 million, sorry. They're not even doing 40 million. So I think this is just a Premier League. It's like a bubble. And I think what happens is they sell to each other, like we've seen with, quote unquote, illegally between Villa and Chelsea, kind of these inflated prices that inflate, the rest of the market. And then maybe they're going to benefit from selling another player because of it. We've seen that happen. But also in the UK, that is where the money is. I mean, that's what pretty much everyone's kind of accepted is when you sell abroad, they can't afford it. For example, Fabio Vieira had an unbelievable season on loan. We bought him for 30 million, 28, I think it was 30 million euros, which we, at the time, was, similar to Zola's signing. Someone who looked very promising, great numbers, came in, physically couldn't keep up. We kept him for a while. We've ended up sending him a loan. He's had a very good loan. They absolutely love him there. And what's happened is we've turned around and said, yeah, well, you can have him for 20 million. And they've gone, oh my God, he's not that good. Which it's not true. Like when you think of Fabio Vieira, Premier League experience, Arsenal player, talented, helped his team this year, and they absolutely adored him. But they won't pay 20 million. Whereas over here, I mean, you got teams like, for example, Sunderland going in for 50, 60 million on Bergvall right now. You got Leeds buying people like Harry Wilson. The whole league is at it. That's what I'd say here. Spurs have already thrown down 80, 90 million on multiple players, including 100 million down on Tonali. That doesn't happen in other divisions. Even if you like a player and you go, oh, he's integral to our future. All right, can we have 15 million? No. Jacob Kivior was playing unbelievably well in a semi-final of a Champions League a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. He went out on loan to Porto. He then went there, won the league with them, and then bought for 20 million euros. And when you look at, Van Hecke and, all these guys here in the Premier League and these centre-backs that people are sought after, Jacob Kivior is a 24-year-old, 25-year-old now, unbelievable centre-back who's played experience level, including semi-finals of the Champions League. And that is the money that's being talked about. And that is what was accepted. And that felt like they were pushing the boat out for that. Whereas, if we went and bought a Sporting Lisbon centre forward like we did last year, it's 55, 60 million. Whereas I can tell you if Gabriel Jesus went the other way, and I know it's different injuries, blah, blah, blah. But even if we sold Gyökeres right now back to any of the other leagues in Europe, including the Bundesliga or La Liga, we would not get our money back. But all he's done is continue his role of winning the league he's in for a third year running. He's included adding 22 more goals to his tally. So if anything, and now he's got more experience because he played in a Champions League final, a Carabao Cup final. He's won the Premier League, the hardest league to win in the world. So if anything, he's more, right? No, I reckon you go, we'll give you 35. And that. And I know that's based on nothing because that hasn't happened. But when you're also looking at the fact that we're looking, there's that rumour, I would not want this to go through, but Julian Alvarez plus Gyökeres, money plus Gyökeres for Julian Alvarez. But the money they're talking is still like 80, 90 million, which would put Gyökeres' value at like 20 million, 30 million. And it's just bizarre. And Julian Alvarez, you bring him in for that. Let's say he does 2 seasons at Arsenal. He scores 25 goals each year. We sell him on to Barcelona. They'll do 10 million up front. 5 million per year for 5 years or something like that. Whereas in the Premier League, we've got teams like City, Chelsea and that just throwing down 100 plus million up front. So no wonder all these players want to come here. And the reason why PSG go, yeah, Barcola sits on our bench behind Doué. He's very good. We do like him. I know a lot of people would love him. We don't necessarily need him. So yeah, would you take 145 million? And Liverpool aren't going to pay 145 million. Excuse me, for a second year running. Not that they've spent 145 million, but they've spent 125, 110, these kind of numbers. They might be able to do it, and it would be a huge signing for them. I think it would really help them. But that figure just, I think, blows them out the water. It's the reason why Arsenal standing their ground with Rodgers or standing their ground with Bruno Guimaraes at the minute, and this is becoming a bit of a drama. It's because we're not just gazumping like other teams. Because could Arsenal go back to Newcastle and go 110 million, we'll have him? And they'll go, yep, and it'll be done today. 100%. And that's what Chelsea do. That's why those deals happen so quick. It's the reason why Man United deals happen so quick and Man City deals. But Arsenal go, no, he's valued here. This is what we're offering. We're going to go under. Like, for example, if I'm buying a house for 250 million, 250,000, and I walk around and I go, that's nice. That's really nice. I'm surprised that's on for 250. Do you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to go, yeah, I'll have it. I'll give you 280 though. You go 235 and they go, we didn't want to go under. Would you do 240? And we go, yeah, we'll go 240. Whether we thought it was 250 and 260 or 270 in our heads, it's natural. That's how you bargain. That's how you do business. So it's just interesting to me that in football, they just gazump. It's if you and I, the listener out here around the world, shout out to everyone around the world listening, because our numbers are going through the roof at the minute, which is unbelievable. So thank you so much. You and I sat here and we got £1 billion and we could buy, someone said buy 10 houses. We're probably just going to buy them at asking price. Just get rid of it. Let's get done. Let's move away. Let's not deal with all the back and forth. Let's not deal with the fees. Let's just go, well, what do you want? All right, have it. And that's what teams are doing. And that's modern football. It's alarming that the two teams doing it are the ones with the most kind of court procedures to go, which is a worry. And I know Arsenal are in the green. We are in a situation where we could pay that I think we could pay over the price for Bruno Guimaraes and by Vinicius, and we'd be absolutely fine in PSR wise. But that's not the point, because 3 years down the run, if that goes south and you lose a couple other players, a couple injuries, things go wrong, 3 years down the line, we're going to be in a very bad situation. When you look at Villa, you look at Newcastle, where all of a sudden in 3 years' time, we're going, oh yeah, we need to sell Saka. And he's a £100 million player and we're selling him for 60 million because we just need the money. That's where we could be. So I understand that. And Chelsea and teams like that just don't really care. They just do it and go, well, it'll work out. Because I can tell you right now, if Chelsea do not make Europe next year, which they shouldn't with all the signings, and we thought that last year as well, by the way, but they still came 10th. They are in real trouble. They are getting seriously. I know they seem to weasel out and they sell their women's team or a couple of hotels back to Bowley, but they are in real trouble, and we don't want to be that team. And I'm happy, for example, to look at our squad and go, we've lost Trossard without Tzolis. I'm actually quite excited about Tzolis, and I'm excited to see him in Girona this weekend. But I'm quite happy with that squad. That squad won the league. And that squad won the league, by the way, against the closest rivals, Man City, who since then have lost Bernardo Silva, about to lose Rodri, and have lost Pep Guardiola, the best manager probably of all time. So they've weakened. Whether they brought in Anderson, whatever they've done, they've weakened. When you look at Liverpool, they've done nothing so far. They've just lost Salah. They've weakened. They've got a new manager. He's a very good manager, but they've got a new manager. They've weakened. Chelsea have added a great player and a great manager. They've improved. Man United, I think, sticking with Carrick is a good idea, and I think some of the signings they've done have been shrewd. They'll be better. But when you actually look at how far those teams were behind, and then the other team were Villa, by the way, and Villa are losing everyone. So they've weakened. So when you zoom out, we talk about zooming out on this podcast a lot. We are in good shape. We need to not worry. But I think sometimes when you're on top, you have to you got to grab the ball, I think, because everything I just said is really true. And we could stand still and potentially still go back to back for the first time in the modern era for Arsenal, which is history for us. But we could also allow people like Chelsea in. There's a very real possibility Chelsea win the league next year, or Man United, or Liverpool. What do you see? There's a lot. Look at the way Spurs are moving. Could they? Better manager? Who knows? So there is ways, if you stay still, that you could be lapped here. But realistically, when you zoom out, you actually think, well, they need a couple of years to bed in, surely. This shouldn't happen overnight. I know that, we didn't throw £100 million players into our squad when Arteta joined year after year for the first few years. It took time. We had to get rid of a lot of, quote unquote, £100 million wage bill based players. To then bring in some shrewd loans and then shrewd signings and then move players from Man City because they did a deal with us because they didn't think we were a threat, and we were a threat. There was a lot to it. Whereas these teams are just throwing money in and going, let's just hope it works. But it's still, no matter how much money you throw at something, it's still got to click. It's still got to gel. It's still got to get a harmony. We've got all that already. And this is why the Vinicius one is really interesting, because the harmony aspect of Vinicius is the first question. Jack, a listener of the show and a very good friend of mine, he messaged and said, he said a lot. I'm going to read it out because I feel like he kind of summed up how everyone is probably feeling right now, because we're kind of conflicted. Because, as I said at the start, is this going to happen, this deal? I'm very doubtful. Should we get excited? 100%. Because I think that's what football's about. It's the same as, like, do you celebrate a goal against Coventry when you go 3-0 up? Yes. You don't just go, nah, it's unfair now. So, no, I would celebrate anything, including in football, because there's so much money involved. There's so much entertainment. So he mentioned, hey, man, how you doing? Thoughts on Vini? Maybe I'm showing my ignorance, but is he actually that good? He did a few step overs at the World Cup, but wasn't amazing. Just think of the wages he'd be on. He needs to be the most perfect player for us, and I'm not sure he is. Would he really track back that much? Seen plenty of videos of him generally just being an idiot on the field. I'll use that word. Too much. I just don't like that. Really don't think he's worth blowing the wage structure. It just feels messy. Ozil and Aubameyang feel it all over again. And I think all those feelings, I spoke to Lewis and he said kind of like the most disliked player in football. And it's true. And, you know, and some of the Arsenal fans are kind of like, we've been the team that have got a positive net spend 10 years running. We've been the team that have paid off a stadium by selling our captain but staying in Europe every year. And we've been told, you're not ruthless enough. You need to win more. We've been through that era. We're in an era under Arteta where we're saying trust the process, being laughed at. Then we started to compete and everyone got a bit worried, but they said they're bottling it. Then we didn't bottle it. So it does feel like the villain arc. It does feel like we should kind of go, well, this is our time to shine. This is our time to not worry about wage bills, not worry about net spend. We've done all that. I mean, we've got people now in the Twitter sphere or punditry talking about, oh, Arsenal spent so much, they should be winning leagues. Yeah, we have spent much. We spent a lot of money. And we have done, particularly under Arteta, because it's modern football. Things change. But I'm just going to read out the stat. This is money spent in the Premier League since its inception. In fifth place, Tottenham, 2.31 billion. Fourth place, Liverpool, 2.35 billion. Man United, 2.73 billion. Man City, 2.99 billion. And then Chelsea top with 3.84 billion. So closing in on 4 billion spent for Chelsea since the inception of the Premier League. And this is a team that were very much a West Ham, history-based, mid-table cup team at the start of the Premier League and were for a very long time until Roman Abramovich came in. Those stats were from Football Insider. That's a lot of money spent. Have you noticed Arsenal not in there? I'm sure we're probably sixth. I don't know. I haven't seen. But I'm sure we're probably sixth. It makes sense. But Tottenham being in there since 92 and what they have to show for it are a couple Carabao Cups and a Champions League final. These are things that should be talked about. Chelsea are top of it, obviously, but they also have a couple Champions Leagues. They've got a Europa Cup. They've got a Conference League. They've got a Super Cup. They've got a Club World Cup. They've got multiple FA Cups, Carabao Cups, and multiple Premier Leagues. Yeah, they spent the money, but they've done it. City, second. Yeah, brilliant. They've spent a lot of money, but they've also got multiple Premier Leagues, Champions League, Club World Cups, FIFA World Cup. All these things to show for it. Man United, yeah, exactly the same, because this is the Ferguson era. They've Champions Leagues, they've got Premier Leagues, everything. Liverpool, a little bit dicey, bit of a cup team, but they also got that Champions League in there, a couple Champions Leagues. Then they've in the recent years won a couple Premier Leagues in the last 6-7 years. Not doing the pose 6-7 there. But then you've got Tottenham, and you just think, my word, that's something that should be talked about. Because that is unbelievable. Because it's not like they've snuck away a Premier League and a couple, Carabao Cups. There's no Premier League in there. There's no. I guess there's a Europa Cup. I should say there's a Europa Cup, but there's a Europa Cup and some Carabao Cups. It's the most adjacent things to win, having spent the fifth most ever. And obviously, I assume we're sixth. But in there, you've got, this is still the Wenger years. This is five Premier Leagues. This is, in Spurs' case, a Champions League final. There is a Cup Winners' Cup, which is the equivalent of the Europa Cup now, which people forget. There is 10 FA Cups, 9 FA Cups, no Carabao Cups, which is interesting. But there's just stuff to show for it. There's Premier Leagues and things like that. And what's being levied at Arsenal now is that it's almost like we're the ones spending too much. Oh, we spent so much last year. Yeah, less than Man United, City and Chelsea and Liverpool. But we were the ones that spent so much. The following year, this year, this is the immediate conversation. If they're spending that much, they need to do it. We haven't spent any money yet. We spent Nkappi and Tazolas. Spent 65, 70 million. Sunderland are about to drop that on one player who's 20 years old. So we haven't done anything yet. But you can feel the energy that if we do the Vinicius deal, because this is the problem with us getting excited. This is the downside and the reminder we're going into another Premier League season is the hypocrisy's coming. Because if we spend that money and those wages, it's going to be Arsenal have to win the league. So there's going to be a pressure. The same pressure that should have been thrown at Liverpool last season. That wasn't. And they buckled. And it wasn't given enough talking point. Because I can tell you right now, if we buy Vinicius and don't win the league, it's the only thing talked about. Yes, Liverpool lost their manager because of it. But the general conversation wasn't enough about how much they spent to retain that title. And that's another thing about standing still or not. It's no guarantees if you throw money in. Like I said, if you're not gelling, and I believe with the Liverpool team is that actually it was an odd season. I think he didn't really do anything, did he? He kept Klopp's team. And I think they kind of just won based on the fact that everyone else dropped off. And I think the following year when people kind of picked back up, I think he got found out. And he also tried to make a load of signings and it wasn't gelling. And this is what I not worry, but hope for Chelsea, Tottenham and these teams is maybe too many signings, too much, needs time to bed in, and Arsenal can kind of be the steady team. But if we spend the money, there's a lot of pressure coming, there's a lot of conversations coming, and we are worse than City and Chelsea. It's not true, but that's what will be talked about. If we don't do it and we end up loaning Rashford last day, which is very likely, it's going to be like they aren't ruthless enough, they don't do enough. And even if we win the league having just loaned Rashford instead of doing that big signing, there's not going to be any plaudits. So that's the thing we have to remember is there is no pat on the back for not spending the money. So we might as well. Like I said, we're in our villain arc of we've done years of all that. We've been the good team, the good guys. People hate us last year. They hated us for the way we played. We couldn't even win right to keep people happy. Couldn't even get to enough finals to keep people happy. We bought, we had such an English core. Not happy. There was so much that people should have been happy. Young manager, enthusiastic. But people weren't happy. So we might as well accept. They're not going to be happy whatever we do. So we might as well do the things that make us, personally, the fans and the club, happy. And I think I can't even explain. I think if Vinicius came to Arsenal, that would be the biggest. I'd say it is probably the most marquee. It would be the most marquee signing. But by the way, we could also get him for cheaper than Barcola's going to Liverpool. And if I'm going to be pedantic, I'll claim that it doesn't matter about wages, because I am so sick of City fans or fans saying Haaland might be the biggest bargain in the modern history at 60 million. If you think Vinicius, we're worried about Vinicius, how much we're going to have to pay him, because it looks like if we were to do it now, it'd be about 125, 130 million, but we'd have to pay him 12 million personally, and him and his agents for like a bonus fee of a signing fee or whatever it is. The wages they think could be around 400,000 plus maybe a little bit more. The thing that people aren't getting is over in Spain, the commission and the league take half of wages. So, for example, when he's asking for, I think he's currently asking for about 550,000. That's closer to 350-ish based on when you take away everything else and you add his sponsors and things like that. So what he's asking for is something that you can kind of give him in England, because in England, yeah, you're taxed to the hilt. But the Premier League aren't taking any of that money. There's nothing being taken or reinvested. So it's more of a true figure. Will he blow up our wage? Yeah. Are people like Declan Rice about to re-sign? And his agent would be stupid to do that straight away and be like, oh, no, if we've been bringing Vinicius, because I think Saka's on 300. Vinicius should be on well over 350. So it's a big old jump. I think the players, you think of Ramsey and Ozil and the situations, the knock-on. I don't think the issue will be Saka going, well, I'm our main player. I think he'll see it as I'm making a lot of money. He's making us better. I want to win trophies. I think they're in that mode. But you have to be paid fairly. And that's why they did the bump on Trossard. Is he was on similar money to Winery and Lewis Skelly, which is not acceptable for a veteran player. So they bumped his pay. I think the problems will come with people like Timber on 90k and 100k and these kind of that level, Hincapi 100k. Because they'll see it as like, well, I'm playing every 3 days. I'm absolutely battered. I'm a big part of why we're winning because we're in the defence. And we're the best defensive team in the country or the world potentially. Why am I valued at a quarter of what this guy is? So that's the conversation they have to have. Is it's only human nature for people to get frustrated. But I actually think that the wage structure part isn't as problematic as first thought, because like I said, he was making very good money in the Premier League because of the way in which they structure it over in La Liga. So that's not worrying me. The fee doesn't worry me because we were looking to, if we were thinking maybe 80 plus million on Bruno Guimaraes and close to 100 million on Rodgers, if Guimaraes still comes in, it's probably, the fee is not far off of what we would ended up having to pay for Rodgers. So the maths work out. Maybe there's another player, maybe another defender that we were talking about, like John Stones. It has to be John Stones on a loan. It can't be Konza for 50, 60 million, because we could have done Rodgers for 117 or Barcola for 145 and then Konza for 60 and then Bruno Guimaraes for 90 in the end. And, you're looking at 300 million? And plus in Capi and Tazola's 370 million. And that's similar to what Liverpool spent, less than what Liverpool spent last year, but it's close to that. It's a large amount. But instead, you get Tazolas and Capi done for 70. You bring in Meslier and John Stones for free. You get Bruno Guimaraes in for 85, let's say. Somewhere around there. And that's 155 million. And then you're left with the Vinicius deal. And that will take you close to 300 million, about 290, which is more kind of, in the modern Arsenal, something that we would spend. We need to make money back, and I do believe there's going to be maybe a more high-profile sale if Vinicius comes than we expect, whether it's an Ozil or Havertz. Someone who's going to fetch 60, 70 upwards, potentially two, because if you think he's going to play on that left with Tazoles, Martinelli and Odegaard, you would hope, if we're smart and we find the right buyers, there's no reason that shouldn't bring us back 160 million or so. And therefore, if you're spending 300 million and half of that comes back, especially with some of the other sales like Kiwior happened this summer, and a couple little kind of, Jesus or Vieira or whatever, maybe Norgard, a couple of those players go out, you could be looking at about 100 million net spend, which is what Liverpool did so well last year, but it made them paper thin as far as squad. The benefit with us is the players that I mentioned going, like Tommy Setford out on loan, but Jesus, Martinelli, let's say it's Odegaard. I don't want these necessarily to be the ones, but Martinelli, he's replaced by Tazolas. Meslier replaces Setford. Bruno Guimaraes replaces Norgard. Vinicius replaces Martinelli. The downside is Wineri coming back off of loan would replace Odegaard. And that sounds like a drop-off, obviously, naturally, but with the fact that we have players like Eze, Moreno and these guys coming in, it feels less that way. And then obviously people like Dowman playing more doesn't necessarily replace Jesus, but it allows different things to happen and more players to be rested. So the squad would be more thin, I would say, generally speaking, but it would be massively improved, I would say. But when you look at Liverpool, I even said at the start of last year, they can't do well because a couple injuries, they're done. And that's exactly what happened because they didn't have midfield. They also, unless they start buying some players, they're in a similar situation again this year. If they get overrun by the amount of games and the amount of minutes they need to put in, they're in big trouble. And I don't think we're thin. I don't think we're paper thin. I think people knew we had a bloated squad. I think it would be more like the perfect size with those sales. I don't want Odegaard to leave. I feel strongly that I like Martinelli a lot, but maybe it's time to have a fresh left side. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. And if we could find a very good buyer, and there's got to be a good buyer out there. When Somerville's going for close to 90 million, you've got to make some money back there. So as far as that goes, I think the wages, it can be done. I don't think it's as ridiculous as we think. I'm enjoying the other fans of other teams really in a panic, explaining how ridiculous and laughable that we think this could actually be done. That it can be done. I know it can be done. I feel strongly from talking to people in the know from The Athletic and other places, it can be done. 100% it can be. We can hold that. Will we? Is different. But the fact that Hand of Arsenal and Gunner Blog, Athletic, and Ornstein are saying what they're saying, they're pretty much saying that Arteta, the Cronkies, Berta, they're all on board on getting Vinicius Jr. So that means that, that worry we have of, will he track back? Does he fit the squad? Is he a problem to the locker room? The powers that be, including people like the Cronkies who have ran multiple franchises to championships and done extremely well. Berta, who is very good at his job, obviously, we saw last year. And Arteta, who is the most Tony Robbins, David Brent type manager that is, all about harmony, all about keeping it together. If they're all on board, they not necessarily know something we don't, but they feel more confident than what we do because we see it on the surface. But I also see videos of Jude Bellingham hugging Vinicius and, all the rest of the Real Madrid teams hugging him. I think people see, the guy dancing in the corner, and that is a problem to people. That's not a problem. I want that. I want that at the Emirates. So a lot of it can be hearsay. People say Mbappe's impossible, but then you see his teammates all grabbing him and, loving him. I think in the modern world, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. In the modern world, apologies. In the modern world, I think if Henry was about, he'd be a £135 million player, and he'd be a problem to the locker room. He's cocky. They don't like his attitude, and he could be a problem to a team, and his wages would be too high. But he's Arsenal's biggest legend. So the modern world puts a light on things that we don't, experience. Aubameyang, people said he was a problem. Yeah, he's a problem. He had a holographic Ferrari or whatever he had, a Lamborghini. He was late a lot, but the players adored him. And so there's a mixture of these two things. And like we said, Jack Wilshere talked about it. Mikel Arteta, when he was a player, used to time people to see if they were late, including Wilshere saying, I was late a few times. And he'd stand at the door. This was as a player and fine people. This is a guy as a manager with Per Mertesacker would find people now. He kept our captain, our best player, out of the team when we needed him because he was late to a training session. This is a guy that wouldn't put up with that. So for him to go, do you know what I want to do? I know we finally won the league. I think I want to blow up all that harmony I've created over 7 years. And that thing that's finally working, I want to just destroy it. So I just got to have faith in a very good manager and a very good team there at Arsenal. The tracking back isn't an issue. That the attitude is an issue. The fact that they're interested tells me the wages aren't an issue. The fee isn't an issue. The next question is, does he want to go? There's conflicting reports that he is just basically, we could be a pawn in him getting a new big deal at Real Madrid. I 100%, like I said at the start, I'm doubtful this is even happening. But we have to enjoy this process. I didn't think, I talked about on the podcast for the last few weeks mentioning, I think there's a chance for Vinicius. And I kind of said it tongue in cheek. I also knew more than I was letting on from other people. But again, I still didn't believe it, even though I was hearing whispers. But I was saying it tongue-in-cheek on here just to kind of be like, what do you guys say? I was doing it at work with Kyle, who's a really good listener of the show, a really good friend as well. And I was like, but Vinicius? I was doing that kind of thing as a joke. But I also knew a bit. But it just felt like, yeah, but we don't do that. And that's how I think the rest of the teams are feeling, the fans, and the reason why they're laughing at us. And I think it is a worry. I think people would be really worried. So when I look at him, I think he's a player that wants to be at Real Madrid forever. I think he's a player that wants to use this as a tool. But there are other whispers. He's just started following all the Brazilian Arsenal lads. Just started. So yeah, there's a Brazilian connection, so it's not necessarily Arsenal. But he's also included Saka and Declan Rice in the people he's just started to follow. That's interesting. This has happened before. Mudryk did the same. There's a lot of things going on. So that's nothing. That's this is sleuth work. It doesn't mean much. This is football. This is big business. Whether he follows them or not, he'll just write. It could be also more leverage for him on the inside to get a bigger deal. But that's interesting. When you think back at the England-Brazil game and he was asking Bellingham to go get Rice's shirt, when we played Real Madrid in the Champions League, he was adamant, and there's videos of it, trying to get Saka's shirt. This is a guy that I think has been quite, I don't want to use the word enamoured. He's been interested by the Arsenal world. Brazilian-wise, we've got a lot of people he's very close friends with. Bruno Guimaraes is a particular friend of his, and Gabriel. There's also Jesus if he doesn't leave, Martinelli. There's a lot going on there that, would ingratiate him into the team and he'd feel more comfortable. I think as well, you forget players like him of his age group, grew up idolising people like Henry. And I really think there's still that. There's also a player that would be interested in London. He's lived in Madrid for so long. He's from Brazil. Could he enjoy a bit of London? He also knows that this is the moment. He either becomes a guy that's at Madrid his whole career, and then maybe there's a little weird, AC Milan bit right before he goes to Saudi or MLS or whatever. But this is a guy that this is his deal. The next 3 to 5 years, whether he signs with Arsenal or Real Madrid or somewhere else, is going to be very important to his career. And in his heart of hearts, he might know, oh no, I definitely want Madrid. But he doesn't want to put that on the table because that you're not going to get the best deal. And this is his big, big deal. But There are some little things in there that I don't think he's against moving to Arsenal. I don't think it's like some people are kind of going, it's all fine, but I just think he just doesn't want to go to Arsenal. Why would he go to Arsenal? It's like, but since Mbappe joined, they've not gone. Mbappe wants to be on the left, Vinicius is in the way. He also wants to be centre forward, but he drifts to that left, gets in his way. There's some problems there. Jose Mourinho's kind of alluded he does not want both of them in the team. He's clearly picked Mbappe. There's no whispers of Mbappe leaving. And I think it's probably the smarter decision in the world football currently. They bought Diamonde for 100+ million yesterday, or going into today. Like, it needs to get finalised, but it looks like it's done. He's more predominantly on the right. So at the minute, it's him, Mbappe and Vinicius, which is, you do look at that and go, that's Galacticos. This is the Galacticos. There is talk that they're in for, they want Elise, which would be a bit more in keeping with that front three, and I think that feels very big. But I think Vinicius Jr, Diamonde and Mbappe it's Galacticos. They've brought in other players like Kanate and Dumfries and Bernardo Silva. The squad is looking very Real Madrid-like. So Vini might be looking at it going, yeah, we're about to have our moment because this is a guy who's winning multiple Champions Leagues. And then Mbappe came in, he hasn't won a trophy since. This is a problem to a player like that. This is a player who might be looking at Arsenal going, looking at, like I said earlier, the league, looking at Arsenal, looking at the players, looking at the age, and going, ooh, this could be a bit of a dynasty. I'd like to jump on that. I've won La Liga in the past. I've won the Champions League in that. But I'd love to be part of the first Arsenal team to win the Champions League. I'd love to win the Premier League and have that on my kind of record. He might be looking at that way and going, that's the team that fits the best for me. So I think it's, I say it's very unlikely, but it is possible. That's what my kind of end goal is. But he is an unbelievable football player. That's the other part I want to add is, it's an old one. I've not watched a crazy amount of Real Madrid other than when we play them, and I've never been overly impressed with him. But when I've watched him in Real Madrid games where Arsenal aren't playing, I've also thought he looks unbelievable. He's so similar to Saka on the left. The way they play, things like that, there's so much to it. For Real Madrid, I just want to bring up in La Liga the last 3 years. He's averaged 30 games a season. So he's not, 23-24, he had a little injury with 26 games. 24-25, he had 30 games. 25-26, he had 36 games, so he played nearly all of them. He gets 15 goals in the first year in 26 games, 11 in 30, and then 16 in 36. He got 4 assists, then 8 assists, then 5 assists. He averages 7 to 8 bookings a season, which is incredible, including a red card in 24-25. But that goal tally, this is coming off the left, essentially, I'm not going to do the 1 in 3 thing I did with Sassuolo, so I apologise for that. But it's almost 1 in 2 he's scoring. And goal involvements, last year, 21 in 36. The year before, 19 in 30. And the year before that, 19 in 26. So similar to that 20 mark. And again, that's what we're looking for. Gyökeres got 23 goals and assists. Saka, we expect that. We're not really necessarily getting that over the other side. We get it from Trossard, but Trossard's gone. So, if we can have a superstar player, that'd be unbelievable. In the Champions League, this is where he really thrives. In 14 games last season, he got 11 goals or assists combined. In the year before, he played 12 games, he got 10. And in the year before that, in 10 games, he got 10. So he's pretty much nearly getting a goal or assist per game in the Champions League. Other than that, it's their cup competitions and, he probably didn't play a crazy amount. He's played 2 games in some of their versions of the cups. So not a lot, but when you look at that, that is the exact type of player we would like to see. But the stats, I think what people worry about, and this is what I'm going to liken it to, and there's a lot of narrative with stats, and you can kind of pick and choose. A left-sided winger for 130 million, let's say, plus biggest wages in Arsenal history. You want him to play 30 in the league next year. You want him to play 35 out of 38 games. And you want him to score 30 goals, Salah-like. He's not done that for Madrid. And Madrid are a team that play in a much easier league with a very good team that have dominated. So in that sense, I get it. I get why people are looking at it going, yeah, but those stats, those stats aren't crazy far off of Trossard stats. And in the Champions League, not far off of Martinelli's stats last year. And you think, is that worth breaking the bank? But I think sometimes there's almost like an optic to it. I think when you line up against Arsenal and next year you look and the starting lineup is David Raya, Timber. I'm going to say Saliba, and I know there's a lot of controversy around people talking about it. Saliba might not be available till January. Very likely. But I'm just going to say, if you do look at our first team, if we make the signings we do, and it's Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Rice, Bruno Guimaraes, Odegaard, and then Saka, Vinicius Jr, and Havertz. I think you look at that team and go, that's a Champions League winning team. That's PSG level. It does take it optically to a different level than when that other side is Tzoles or Trossard. And that's not be disparaging. I think sometimes you just need a name, and that name might give similar results. But the other thing is the shirt sales, the media that gets brought to Arsenal with that is massive. It really, like, the money you'll make back on shirt sales alone is incredible. Like, this is like when people buy Ronaldo, and Vinicius Jr is a Fortnite sprite right now, which is a little thing you pick up on the game. He's a skin on Fortnite. This is Neymar. This is, Messi. I put Harry Kane in there now. There's Mbappe, Haaland, Ronaldo, Messi. There's a certain level of player. He's in it. We don't have those players. We haven't had a player like that since Henry that's in that kind of level. And even Henry was a little bit of an underground goat. He was over in the Premier League working hard. And that's the other thing, is some of these players now want Ballon d'Ors and things like that, and that happens in La Liga. It doesn't happen. Haaland won a treble, scored nearly over a goal a game, pretty much did, and wasn't really in a conversation to win a Ballon d'Or. So you kind of got to accept you're not going to win things like that. Again, Rodri did it, but you've got to accept that it's very likely you're going to put in a bit of a shift, maybe not score quite as many goals, but you might get some honours. And that's what Henry was quietly doing. If he was spent that whole career after Monaco and Juventus at Barcelona, probably won multiple Ballon d'Ors, probably scored multiple goals, probably was being talked about. So you've got to kind of know football to know Henry better than the average guy on the street. But do you know the people on the average guy on the street? No, nowadays. The kids. I walked down a street in the middle of nowhere, Wales this week. What did I see? 2 Brazil shirts. Neymar, Vini Jr. I don't see many Henry shirts. I didn't see many Henry shirts back in the day. You see Messi, you see Ronaldo, you see those two. That's kind of it. So that there's also that aspect of it. It brings so much in it. And just optically, I think it really threatens people, because when you're playing that game and later on in the game they're getting tired, you bring on Tzoles and Gyökeres for Vini and Havertz. Maybe Bruno Guimaraes drops into Rice's role and you bring in Lewis Skelly, and you bring Eze on. Hincapi comes on for Calafiori if you want to shore up shop. Ben White to do overlaps. There's so many options. When you look at that squad, you just go, whoa. Because you know what I mean, like that back four, and this is without making John Stones a signing. But if we do, let's say it's Raya, and if he's injured, you got Kepa, then Meslier. Your centre backs are Saliba and Gabriel. You got Mosquera or any of the fullbacks to play the other one, or John Stones. The fullbacks, you got Hincapi and Calafiori. You got Timber and Ben White. These are unreal players. The 6 rowers, Bruno Guimaraes or it's Rice or Zubamendi. The left 8 is Bruno Guimaraes or Moreno. The right 8 is, or Lewis Skelly, and then the right 8/10 is Eze or Odegaard or Waneri or Dauman. You got Madueke and Saka or Dauman or Waneri. You got Havertz and Odegaard, Havertz and Gyökeres. And on the left you got Vinicius Jr and Tzoles or Eze. God, that is some squad. It really, and it cost a lot. Yeah, still not the amount it's cost the other teams. And that's the thing we got to try and get out, because it's for whatever reason being highlighted on us before we've even done it. So we might as well just go, yeah, we did. Yeah, we spent a lot. Modern football. We tried it the nice way. Didn't work. Everyone made fun of us. We tried it the mean way. People don't like us. Let's just add the most disliked player in the world to this team. So in overall, I think it would be an unbelievable signing. I think it would be the biggest signing in Premier League history, which is ironic that it's coming from Arsenal, because no matter what people say, we are not the team that make gigantic signings. Yes, we've made Declan Rice. It's a massive signing. But you look at Chelsea, they've got, I think, 5 now over £100 million players in their starting 11. And they've even moved one on. We're not that team that should be top of that. The even funnier thing is, if we buy him and Liverpool buy Barcola, which I think would be a really good signing for Liverpool, but not at that price. Because I think when you look at Vinicius Jr. and Barcola, you go, oh, yeah, you spend 130, 140 million, make a big signing out of Vinicius. Or you spend 85, 90 and you buy Barcola and maybe you're the one that wins that deal. But instead, Barcola's more. Yes, and again, similar to the Haaland to City thing, I understand it's not actually more because Barcola is not going to fetch the wages and the weekly fees and all these things that Vinicius is, because there's a lot of hidden fees. We have to remember that. Even when you look at those lists like Tottenham are in the top 5, they're nowhere near the wages of City and Chelsea or even Man United. Liverpool aren't anywhere close. Arsenal aren't anywhere close. The wages, they sit different. There's certain teams that can afford this and certain teams that cannot. Whether they should be able to afford it and other teams shouldn't, that's a whole other question for another day. And there's still 115 reasons why maybe that isn't the case. And we're still not getting an answer for that. But I just look at it and go, make that deal. Get Gomes over the line. I know we don't want to spend over the hilt. I think if we bought Vinicius in and we sold Martinelli and we didn't buy Gomes, I wouldn't be disappointed because I really want Lewis Skelly to be the future of that midfield. And Gomes coming in does stuff up his pathway slightly, but only for a year or so. Because naturally, in a year, Gomes gets a bit older. Maybe Lewis Skelly plays more. Declan Rice, his body is breaking down a bit. There's also going to be a big sale at some point. Is it Declan Rice to Real Madrid next year? Is it Saka? Is it... Some of these things will happen, and it's not going to be nice. It's a bit unfortunate. But the one thing I do think is something we need to think about is that midfield is great. Zubamendi, Rice, Bruno Gomes. These are all 26 or higher, by the way. Lewis Skelly, 19. That's why I really like that. And then you look at the 10 role. Moreno, 30. Odegaard, 28. Eza, 28, I want to say. That 10 role, it needs to be turned over soon. Whether it's a Nico Paz or Yildiz, he comes off the left, but whether it's Arda Güler, whether it's right in front of us and Max Down and Ethan Waneri, that has to be thought about because we have got, assets that are depreciating in Eza and Odegaard. And I love them both and I want them here. But we do have to think about their smart sales at some point. Declan Rice is someone who I'd love to play until he's 32 and he becomes a bench player at 30, but he's still someone who's still so good when he comes on. I would love that. But the club also got to think, but in 2 years' time, do you reckon you go, do you know what I mean, for 100 million and we make back, because it could be imagine getting 5 years out of Declan Rice, giving us all these honours and getting him every week. And then we still make, not a profit on him, but just break even on him. Take away wages, obviously. You got to remember that. But you break even on a player like that. And there's not many players that I bought for over 100 million you ever break even on or make a profit on. So, I don't know. There's some sales that are going to happen. I don't think they're this year. I do think we're going all in. But I do also think there's a major sale to be done. Martinelli could be that sale. But I've got a feeling it could be someone who's not him. And I don't want to weaken this squad because, like I said, when I just named that squad where I added Stones, Gomes, and Vinicius Jr. and I only sold Martinelli, Jesus, Norgard. And again, that could also be over 100 million in sales, including Kiwior now. Definitely over 100 million in sales, maybe 120. But you're still spending 300 million in a summer. But I just think that squad has the ability to fight on all four fronts and win all four, especially, and I felt this way a couple of years ago when we were unbelievable and we lost out on a point on the last day of the season. It felt like that was our last chance. It felt like that was the team and that was the year because other teams fell off. City ended up becoming unbelievable at the end. But it just felt like that was our opportunity. And then last year, not the season we won, the year before where Liverpool won it, it also felt like that. It was like, oh, we've come second all these times for a year where everyone drops off. But we dropped off with it. And Liverpool just snuck in and went, oh, okay, we'll win another Premier League. And you go, oh my God, I can't believe we missed out on another. But realistically, if we got ourselves together and not got the injuries, we would have won that one. And then last year would have won a nice tight one with City. Then you'd be looking now and going, like I said, Man City got 115 charges looming. No Pep, no Bernardo Silva, and it looks like no Rodri. Yeah, they got Haaland, they got unbelievable players. But there's no way that team can be better than they were last year. Because you can't lose the best manager of all time, maybe the best central midfielder or a six, maybe ever in the Premier League. I don't know. And then a player like Bernardo Silva who just kind of glued it all together. I don't think you can use that all in one summer and go, yeah, we're fine, and compete on all four fronts. Yeah, they might pick something up. They might even win the Premier League, but they can't be as good as they were last year. It's going to need someone to drop off for them to do something, I think. So it just feels like an opportunity that if we could really go hard and become a team that, if we were 95% amazing last year, make us 98%, go all in. Because if there's a year to go all in, what you don't want to do is don't go all in, lose the league. Next summer you do lose Rice, and then the following summer, that summer you go, oh God, should we buy Yildiz for 200 million? Because we're just in a panic. And then we don't do it, and then you think, oh, we could have just spent that money 2 years ago or a year ago with that squad that was good enough clearly to get to a Champions League final, a Carabao Cup final, and win the Premier League. And we could have gone in and spent all that money instead of spending it in 3 years' time. Because, by the way, if you don't want to sell anyone, maybe the odd player, we've got Dalman breaking through. We've got Lewis Skelly. We've got Winery. We've got Salmon. We've got Winery's brother. We've got so many players coming through. Why is it slipping my head? The twins. The name of them have completely slipped my mind, and I apologise. But the twins from Ecuador. These guys are coming through. So you can maybe lose a couple of players that you make some money on over the next couple of years, but keep the core together. There could be 4 or 5 years here. This could be a dynasty. Make it a dynasty. That's what I say. So, across the league generally, I think in Jaya, Everton is looking at Saudi Arabia, which is such a... I know we've got Saudi Arabian listeners. It does feel... With the MLS, we do make this kind of thing of like Griezmann, he goes to the MLS. Ibrahimovic at the end goes to MLS. Henry, Rooney. But Saudi does feel a bit like the MLS a little bit, where you go, oh yeah, Ronaldo went there at 36 or whatever it was. When you see a couple players like Njai, like that's a guy that could completely revolutionise, a Tottenham or, really help an Arsenal right now. That is the most connection to, if we bought him instead of Tazoles for that left side, I think I'd be like, whoa, this is good. He could go to a team on the cusp like Villa. But him going to Saudi Arabia, it feels a bit like, I don't know. And I know there's honours to win out there. You still make World Cups and, but the Champions League's gone and it's a bit out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately. But I don't like him doing that. I just think, when you looked at Everton, you thought, oh, they could be a team next year if we can do a couple of things. I do also look at Everton and go, well, if you sell him for God knows how much to Saudi Arabia, because he's very good, you want to put 80% of that money you get for him into Martinelli? Maybe. I don't know. But that's happening. Across the board, I mentioned the Real Madrid signing. Other than that, not a crazy amount is happening, but that was the biggest news story. I mentioned at the start, I don't even think I even finished it, but I was walking around a food market. I looked at my phone and I went, that is such great stuff. Henry Winters just tweeted a very long one. I have not read this, so bear with me. I'm going to read it out loud. Henry Winter, 1 hour ago. The immediate reaction to headlines linking Vinicius Jr with Arsenal is all part of an elaborate contract renewal dance between the Brazilian star and Real Madrid. He has a year left on his current deal at the Bernabeu, so many questions and obstacles are to any move. Could Real president Florentino Perez, continence, great word, losing such a star and merch magnet, he's the fifth best-selling shirt in the world. Would Arsenal pay his mega wages? Would there be factionary impact on others' contract renegotiating at the Arsenal? Arsenal, a very well-run club, substantial transfer budget. They're ambitious and wanting to build on last season's success. Signing an A-lister caliber talent would be a coup. But at 26, he's heading into his peak years. He's a brilliant pace, brilliant one-on-one dribbler, creator, scorer, entertainer with experience, 2 times Champions League winner, 3 times La Liga winner. He doesn't just threaten with speed in behind, he threatens also with his skill to weave through packed defences. He's a game changer. But would he leave the biggest club in the world? Arsenal need a player with trickery, speed and menace down the left. But why would Real Madrid let him go? Yan Diamonde, who can play left or right, has arrived, but won't Real, Perez and Jose Mourinho want to keep a formidable front three of, as I mentioned earlier, Diamonde, Bellingham, Vinicius and Mbappe? Even interest in Vinicius Jr. is a show of ambition by Arsenal, along with their more realistic pursuit of Bruno Gomes and Enzo Conta. So he's kind of saying that he reckons it really is a kind of, we're used as a pawn to get a bigger deal. And I 100% get that vibe. I do. But again, like I said at the start, I really don't think we should let that stand in the way of us getting excited. And again, everyone's going to laugh at us when he does resign. But you know what I mean? I'd rather be out there trying to get Vinicius and getting laughed at when we don't than us just not being bothered and trying to get in Zonzi again. You know what I mean? Let's have a look. What else we got? Nah, it doesn't look much. They're on their way to Girona. I've got pictures of Jesus, Nelson, on their way to Girona on the plane. Also, players like Gyökeres and Havertz have made the plane. Tazoles as well is another one I'd love to see this weekend. But I'll get into a lot of that on Wednesday, a lot more kind of pre-season-y stuff. And obviously, if anything continues along in the Vinicius Jr saga, I'll also be jumping in on that. But it looks like nothing else has happened since I started recording because everything moves so quick, doesn't it? So, hey, it's exciting. Is it going to happen? Do not know. But let's live on the edge of a lightning bolt and just get excited about it. Why not? But that's been the Vinicius podcast. I might as well just call it that because there's not much else to talk about because that just took over and we do need to talk about it. We do need to discuss it. We need to get excited. We need to understand the parameters and what could go wrong or what could go right. In closing, how sure am I of the signing happening? 1 out of 10. I'm not saying 1 out of 10, but out of 10. I'm going to put myself at a 4. Just under the 50-50. I'd say 40% of me thinks there's a chance. I think it would be unbelievable. I don't know, if they thought... I think if we do, I think 100,000 people will appear outside the Emirates and have a party. I genuinely do. Because it is just a mad signing. But I think the crux in all of this isn't going to be money or anything like that. It's whether the actual player has any interest in actually leaving. And there is a small part of Perez, if he turns around and goes, I don't have any interest in paying you mad money because we've got a new 20-year-old winger, we've got Mbappe, we've got Jude Bellingham, we've got these players, that would mean he goes, okay, I'm off. And there is a chance he turns to Arsenal, goes, this is the money I want, in an anger. We go, oh, no, that's way more than we thought. We can't do that. And he ends up in Saudi. We don't know. But, yeah, it's down to the player, I think, and what he will make happen and push Florentino Perez. But again, like I said, by Wednesday, stuff could have changed. I know Bruno Guimaraes is back in training on Friday, so I expect that deal to intensify. It looks like it's intensified a little bit. I think a second bid of 73 million was rejected. They're going to want us to go to 85. I know it. Whether we do or not, I don't know. And maybe they're caught in a real no man's land right now where they think, well, if we end up spending 140 million with add-ons for Vinicius, we maybe have to go look at something else, somewhere else in the league maybe to get that deal done. Someone who out there, by the way, that hasn't been talked about, and if maybe Guimaraes and Vinicius doesn't happen, is Adam Wharton. Hasn't really been talked about anywhere. And I'm very interested in whether he gets brought back up as a sale somewhere in the league because he's an unbelievable midfielder, one for the future, and there's not been much talk. So I'll be interested in that. And Alex Scott is the other one. Time will tell. I think the transfer window is going to get absolutely crazy, so it's a great time to join our Patreon because we're going to have episodes going up constantly over there, which will be ad-free. They'll be sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, sometimes interviews, sometimes guests. It'll be different. So, and also it gets you in that raffle for a graded Arsenal sports card. So please check out our Patreon. Please check us out here on YouTube. I think we're on TBA Wrestling, which is mine and Joe's wrestling-based YouTube, but that's the connected YouTube account. We don't have a Gunners Rust YouTube, but we do have a TikTok and other places. And if you're here on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music, please give us a 5-star review. Just take a couple of seconds to click that 5-star and say great show or something. And it really does help us get seen by a lot more people because I think if you search Gunners, I think we're like 3rd in line. I'd love to be top of that. I'd love to be in the top 10 of the Arsenal searches. But time will tell. But thank you so much for all the new listeners. And we'll be back on Wednesday. Where we're going to talk about pre-season a bit more and whatever drama's happened until then. So until then, have a good time. Bye-bye.